everybody, and welcome to another edition of Cars, Guitars, Bourbon, and Barbecue. Today's special guest is Taras Andre. Taras is our luthier, and pretty good dude. I mean, well, pretty good for a Colorado
on his
guy.
good days.
On a good day. We have really seen some amazing stuff.
Yeah.
You've worked on, I've bought, we've sold probably dozens of older Gibsons and Martins.
Yeah.
Done work for people, done some restorations. That guitar we got from Steve Peck in Richmond comes to mind. It was a Koa.
Yeah.
It was in three different boxes when we got it, right?
Yeah, and I think it had a few different shots at repairing it previous, and
Right.
I think it sat untouched for 20 years before we got it.
Right.
And I think it had 5 or 6 really wide cracks on the front. The back was all open. So yeah, that was a pretty big restoration.
Let's take a time out for a minute and talk a little bit about the type of glues that they used back in the day and why it's important to go back to that.
So most of the vintage stuff, Gibsons and Martins and stuff, the acoustic stuff was put together with hot hide glue.
When you say hot hide glue, that's
it's an animal-based
glue.
Yeah,
glue.
so that's, it probably goes back to the Stone Age. It's one of the first types of glue that anybody was using.
Somebody burned a horse and they're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I don't know how it came about.
Right,
Yeah.
Gotta wonder how somebody stumbled into that.
But it's really, it's a great glue for musical instruments because it's reworkable.
Mm-hmm.
You can put new hot hide glue on old hide glue and it'll bond to each other.
Wow.
It's repairable, so you can take it apart, and it sounds a lot better.
So let's talk about the sound aspect of it. Is there some basis for the thought that it might become crystalline, or?
Yeah, I think it becomes a lot harder, and it's crystallized, so it transfers sound a lot better.
Right.
Than like a modern type bond, which is kind of rubbery, never fully hardens.
And tight bond is something that's convenient, right? It's more convenient.
It is, yeah, and
pick it out of a bottle and go.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place for it, and I use it a lot, and most newer instruments are constructed with that kind of glue, so I don't mind using it.
Right.
But on old guitars, I like to repair them in the manner they were built.
I think it's labor intensive. I've seen you back there, over your stove, cooking it up. Got a little witch's hat on.
Yeah, and it's you have to work quickly with it, so you kind of have to be prepared. You're doing dry runs with getting all your clamps set up. Like if you were to be gluing a bridge, you really want to. You have maybe under 2 minutes to work with hot hide glue before it starts to gel up, and then you got to start over and scrape it all off. So you're heating pieces and just trying to keep everything warm, and it's kind of.
So you kind of juggling.
Once you put the glue on, it's go time. So
juggling.
And no answering phone calls or.
Yeah, you guys leave me alone.
That's why I come off cranky
sometimes. That's the grumpy part.
Yeah.
I'm working with this. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So that's a process that obviously is painstaking, but it has great results from these older instruments. Now, just a few things that we'll talk about some of the restorations, more notable ones that we've done in-house and that you've worked on, but talk a little bit about the components of a guitar, the braces and the structure and what goes wrong.
So these old Gibsons are notorious for having loose braces. Unlike a Martin, they don't tuck their braces into the lining. So there's a kerfing that goes around that connects the side to the top. And the best method is to tuck the braces under them. They never did that on old Gibsons, and the braces tend to be over radiused. So once they come loose, they just start popping. And this guitar was sent to us, I think it was shipped to us about a week or so ago. And when we got it, the X brace, both pieces of the X brace, one of the tone braces, and the bridge plate was loose. And it could have been, it just got so cold in shipping and humidity, or it could have taken an impact and knocked everything loose. And you really need to, if you notice you have a loose brace, you really need to kind of get in there and fix it. Otherwise, the top will start to distort. It'll start to belly. It could cause a lot of issues, cracking, and that kind of thing.
And for people listening to this, the way they did this was you tap them, right? You tap to loosen.
Yeah. Usually you could hear them. You can hear the strings rattling on the frets.
It's got a nice tight kind of bongo sound.
Yeah. And when you tap, you hear a loose brace. It'll be kind of it'll be a different
Right.
sound. And usually you could kind of tell if the bridge is pulling forward and there's a big belly behind the bridge in this area or in this area. Sometimes it means that the braces come loose there and it's let the top kind of pull away from it.
So in addition to the bracing and the bridges, we're oftentimes dealing with cracks because these things are not hydrated properly and they're around heat sources or whatever general life they live for the 60, 70 years they're around.
Yeah.
And they develop cracks. So you end up doing some of that work as well.
Yeah, and those are always good to catch early too. If you start noticing a crack coming, it's really important to kind of jump on it right away because you can tend to close it up a lot easier and put a cleat behind it. Sometimes we don't put cleats on them if we feel that it's strong enough with just gluing it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if it keeps opening up, we'll put a cleat behind it. And yeah, I tend to not do touch-up work on cracks and stuff anymore.
One of the more notorious cracks you get is a pickguard crack.
Yeah, especially on Martins and Gibsons as well. But the nitrocellulose, the cellulose material in the pickguard starts to shrink, and it's glued to the top, so it starts pulling the wood with it, and it'll develop cracks and that kind of thing.
Now, you do, obviously we do a lot of neck resets here, and again, that's a function of...
So it's changing the angle of the neck to the body. Most people think that the neck has pulled back and this angle has changed, but what's really happened is the sides and the top and the guitar body has moved more than the neck itself. So the top has sunk and the sides have pulled out this way, so it'll bring the neck back like that, and then you start getting high string height. And you can only go so far down with the saddle before you start running out of room.
So typically, you're measuring where it's 12th fret?
Yeah, that's usually the rule of thumb. I like on acoustics, 3 30-seconds and 2 30-seconds at the treble and the bass. And yeah, kind of that's how you get your string height. And then you want enough saddle sitting out of the bridge to have enough break angle at the string, and yeah, that helps a lot with tone and projection.
Right.
But yeah, so this neck's never been off this guitar. It's a 1946.
1946.
And it still has a great neck angle, and it's crack free. So a lot of times when you see stuff like this, means that the guitar was built in the winter when the wood is really dry. So they tend to not develop cracks or move around a lot, opposed to something that was built in the summer where the wood was still pretty wet, and then it's had time to kind of dry out over the years, and it starts to crack and that kind of thing. But yeah, I do a lot of neck resets.
So which ones do you prefer, a Gibson or Martin?
Martin all day. Martins are they're, you know, where you drill into the 15th fret and you hit the neck pocket, and a little bit of steam, and they usually come apart pretty easily and in one piece. But Gibsons, they're finished. There's finish along the neck joint. Usually the heel is glued to the body, and the dovetail joint has a lot of glue in it as well. So they're glued a lot stronger, and they could be a pain to get out. So usually they take a lot longer, and you have to take every precaution and just kind of ease them out.
You're good at it. I mean, you've done dozens of these now, and we've done Nick Lucas's, and we've done 36 D18s, and
that was that 36 shade top D18. You always kind of go into those guitars A little bit worried just because they're so valuable and sought after. But I probably had that neck off in 5 minutes. And it's just, it's going to come off easy and it's going to go back together easy. So.
That's one of my sort of best of acoustic guitars that I've ever owned.
Yeah.
That
was a cool instrument.
We are a little jaded though. You're holding a 46 J45. There's a banner
over there.
Banner J45 over here. So we.
Well, we see maybe 3 times the amount of Gibson stuff than we do Martins.
Right.
And I asked the old luthier in Richmond, Steve Peck, why that was, and he was like, Gibsons fall apart. I'm like, oh, it's that easy, isn't it? Yeah. That makes sense.
So we've worked on a lot of acoustic guitars. We've also been fortunate to work on some amazing electric guitars, and I'll take the opportunity to tell the story. A few years ago, not last year, but in 2020, I was out in San Francisco doing some buying at a show, and I got a call from a friend in Canada. He was on tour, and that morning I'd gone on Facebook and looked at just scanned Facebook, and someone put up on the Flying V Facebook group a picture of a 59 Flying V, hashtag Rumble Seat Music, and I thought, damn, they got another one. They got a V. And little did I know that my friend Colin Cripps had been in touch with this gentleman and gave him a real honest evaluation of what it was worth online on the Facebook page. So all of a sudden people knew where he lived because of his Facebook profile, and they knew that he had a very valuable guitar. So he became anxious to sell it, and we were anxious to buy it. So I flew home the next morning. I cut my trip short, drove home, flew home from San Francisco, went to the bank, took as much money as they had in the bank, and rode down, took everything they had, and drove down, took it apart, looked at it, and found out it to be an authentic 1959 Flying V, one of very few Flying Vs built that year. They were not popular. Dealers that were used to selling their really fine arch tops and other guitars thought that they were too futuristic and they didn't sell. And oftentimes they'd send them to little stores and little markets, like not Manny's in New York, or like not Chuck Levin's, maybe Chuck Stig get one, but they sent them to little small markets. Right. People that really want to be a Gibson. Well, if you want to be a Gibson dealer,
we're
I got to
get rid of these.
So the Flying V ended up being something I brought back, and you and I worked on it extensively. You want to talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah. So the story is that it was found in a landfill,
right,
in Lynchburg,
right.
And now that guitar is kind of famous.
It's a famous guitar.
It has become a pretty famous guitar, but we had it before it was the Lynchburg landfill V. Right. It was just a trashy V.
Well, that's the amazing thing about this guitar is that it had, what did you call them, tone bunnies. It had dust in it.
Yeah.
There was dirt in it. It was just...
I think it had maybe a little bit of house paint dripped on it.
Right.
At one point.
My theory on that is that the guy took it out and didn't want to play it anymore. It's stuck in his shed, put it up against the wall. It's a V, so you can stick it against the wall. And then there's a shelf. He goes and paints the garage and hangs it up, and the paint drips and it goes down to it. That's my theory.
Yeah, but everything was there and it was original. So it was really just very sympathetic and just cleaning up a little bit and leaving most of the mojo on it.
Did you do any fretwork on that?
I did not. We left the original frets in it, which were worn down to the board, but at that point sometimes we tend to, on guitars like that, instead of doing the refret, we let the buyer decide that, because some people just want them with all original everything.
He wanted the dirt.
Yeah.
We sold it
we sold him a bag of dirt that came off of it as well.
We sold it to a good friend of ours and a super collector, Chris Blakely, who goes by Fried Okra if you're out on the forums or out on the Facebook pages of the world. But that guitar was pretty exceptional. One of the pickups in it, one of the coils in the PAF was not working, so we took it down to Lindy. Lindy took it apart and repaired it. So we were fortunate to be able to kind of bring that guitar back very painstakingly. I took a lot of the paint out myself, and I think that's where I got arthritis. But
yeah, I set you up with the naphtha and Q-tips.
yes, and we kind of went to town on that. So that was a very noteworthy guitar, and but we also worked on a few original Les Pauls.
Some bursts. Yep. And probably every year pre-CBS Fender anything. Yeah, we see a lot of that.
We do.
And that was when I first got into guitar repair and playing guitar. That was all I ever cared about was early Strats and Tellys and stuff like that. And my focus has shifted since then, but I do enjoy that stuff.
And then
custom colors and
I love it. Yeah, love it. That's kind of, I remember way back when I first started, and I started doing this in the early 1980s, and Cesar Diaz lived near me, and he was kind of a mentor anyway. There was a guy over in Dover, Delaware, had a 63 or 64 Lake Placid, Scott Thompson, had a Lake Placid Blue Strat with a green guard, really clean one, and asked Cesar to go over there with me and help me vet it. And he's like, man, what are you talking about? What are you buying a custom color for? They're same guitar, sunburst, a lot less money. But I think I paid $1,400 for it back in the day.
Wow.
And I've always had a thing for colors. We've had a lot of great custom color guitars through the shop.
Roman Red.
The Roman Red was amazing.
Yeah, that was probably one of the rarer ones, right?
Yeah, a 1959 Roman Red Stratocaster.
Yeah.
We've had a couple blondes and Lake Placids and a lot of great instruments, a lot of great Strats. But yeah, it's been fun, and we also got an opportunity last year I got an email from a fellow in Nova Scotia, and his father his email to me said, I'm interested in knowing the value of my father's 59 Les Paul. There's a phone number. Boom, I call him.
Yeah.
Immediately struck up a rapport with the gentleman. Really nice guy, and we kind of tentatively went back and forth on some pricing, and finally I just said, what's the number? And he gave me the number, and I said, I'll take it. So I drove up to Nova Scotia. I learned that his father was a fiddler and had won the Canadian Maritimes Fiddling Competition in 1959, and they had awarded some prize money and a trip down to Boston. So unfortunately, I come to find out later that his name was not listed in the Hall of Champions. He's of African descent. So he took this money, prize money, went down to Boston, walking down the street, walks by World Just Music. There's a 59 Les Paul in the window. Walks in and buys it. He's a fiddler. He doesn't play it much. So his son picks up the guitar when he's young, starts to play it a little bit, kind of as a novelty act for his father. When his father goes out and plays out somewhere, he carts the kids out, put him on a chair, and he plays the burst. So when I met them, again, I realized that they're African descent, and the whole competition was amazing in that his name is not listed, and also that he came to Canada through the Underground Railroad, which, of course, Annapolis, Maryland runs right through here. So it was a very full circle event. And of course, as you know, that guitar, we sold it to a client, and we met him in Philly at the Jason Isbell show, and Jason played it on stage during the show. So it was the Super Bowl for guitar deals.
Yeah, definitely.
So
a highlight.
So we're excited about our capabilities here at Garrett Park to be able to repair vintage instruments. We also do we set up and do work on most any guitar or amp, and we're excited about having you here. So tell us about yourself a little bit. Where did you grow up?
I grew up mostly in Colorado. My family's originally from Maryland, but I did most of my growing up in Colorado. I started playing guitar when I was maybe 14, 15. I think I was a freshman in high school, and kind of took to the Hendrix and the Stevie Ray thing, and really got into it pretty heavily. And then I had a couple hand-me-down guitars from my sister, and one of them was a purple Squire.
Cool.
So that's where I kind of started my first tinkering with guitars, as I stripped all the purple paint off that guitar and painted it green with a red racing stripe. And
Well, now you took a little run at being a guitar player too, right?
yeah. I played for a number of years. When I first started playing, I was so young that I had to have my my parents come with me to all the blues clubs and the bars. But I did that for a good while, and then just to a little easier career, I wanted to shift my focus to working on guitars, because I was always a tinkerer, taking things apart. And
What was your association with Jared James Nichols?
oh, I met him at the Berkeley summer program in Boston.
Yeah.
And we were both kind of the hot shots of the program, and then I just totally forgot about him until like a year or two ago. I kind of like put his face and then realized that
Who's that dude with all the hair?
Yeah, exactly. And he's taken off since then.
Yeah, he's good.
So, he's all over the place now.
So you and I guess as far as your association with Garrett Park, I guess you reached out to me about this time 5 years ago and said, hey, I'm interested in coming back to Maryland. I've been working on guitars. And we struck up a conversation. I happened to be out there on a buying trip, and we met in Evergreen, and then you came out, I guess, in the fall. So it's
September. I think we met in March, and then I came out that following September.
Right.
Yeah.
And you had already been working on guitars, playing in bands.
Yeah. So I senior year of high school, I took some extra credit course at Red Rocks Community College, where I learned to build my first guitar for some extra credits, and that was with Robbie O'Brien, who is actually a pretty well-known teacher and does online courses and stuff. And then maybe a year or two later, I did a setup and repairs class there as well. And then in 2013, I went to Gallup School of Luthier.
Gallup.
Yeah.
That's Brian Gallup?
That's Brian Gallup in Michigan.
Michigan. Where's that in Michigan?
Big Rapids.
Big Rapids.
So it's about an hour outside of Grand Rapids.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were here, how long was that course?
That was 3 months.
3 month intensive course.
Yeah, very intensive. You kind of live in the housing that they provide. And
Right.
yeah, really cool. I was there during the winter, so it was dark and cold, and all you had to do was work on guitars and play music. So yeah, that was cool. And then I got out of there, went back to Colorado, Evergreen, and opened up a little shop. And kind of did guitar repair on the side while I worked a construction job, and wanted a change of location and scene, so I reached out to you, and
here we are.
Been full time ever since.
That's right.
Yeah, it's really, I've got to work on pretty much everything I've dreamed to work on.
Yeah.
And it's cool to be a little more specialized in the vintage acoustic stuff, because it's, a few pieces of wood and glue.
Yeah.
You can't hide behind much. So
No.
it's a good sounding guitar. It's not. It's working properly. It's not. So, and yeah, it's been cool to be able to see all these things and tell the difference and all the little quirks and
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us today.
yeah, of course.
And 5 years ago. And thank you, everybody, for joining another edition of Cars, Guitars, Bourbon, and Barbecue. Peace out. Thanks. Cool, man.
Cool.
Thank you.